Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of A Brush with Death. I'm your host, Miss Casey Hanalei, and in this series I sit down, I tell you a true crime story, and I paint you a pretty picture at the same time. Now, if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, you love true crime, you love art, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That way you will never miss one of my terrible stories. So, before we get into the case today, I want to introduce you to our special guest, which is me! This is one of my self-portraits that I talk about sometimes. So this one I did in college about 13, 14 years ago, a long time ago. And it's a good one. I usually wear glasses. I don't wear glasses for my videos, so, it kind of looks like me, I think. If I have that smug look on my face, I can recreate for you. But anyways, what case are we talking about today? Well, we are going to revisit the Gypsy Rose case again today. There was some Freedom of Information documents that were released a few weeks ago, so I definitely want to revisit this case and go over those documents and kind of see what else we can find and do a little bit deeper of a dive in this case. So let's get into it, guys. So if you're just catching this series and you haven't watched the Gypsy Rose, our first coverage of the Gypsy Rose case that I put up a few weeks ago, please watch that first before you get into this, because we won't be covering the original case in this video. We'll just be covering the additional documents and stuff like that. So go ahead and I will put a link on the video so that you can go right to that video and view that first, and then come back here and see me again and watch this video as well and let me know what you think. I want to know your thoughts. So we are revisiting the Gypsy Rose Blanchard case today because of a new set of FOIA, or Freedom of Information Act documents that recently came out. Some people say FOIA. Is that like the right terminology, or is that just people being weird? Anyways, I say FOIA, but maybe you say FOIA, I don't know. But this is Freedom of Information Act, right? And these documents focus mostly on Nicholas Godejohn's trial, and they were released about a month or so ago, right around the time I was originally doing my research for the first time we covered this case, so I just missed them, so I'm sorry, guys. So, I post a lot on, obviously I post on YouTube, I post a lot on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, and, try to get my stuff out there. And several of you pointed out, some kindly, some not so much, that I missed these documents. But either way, I thought it would be a good opportunity to dig into those documents and give you a proper update based on what is revealed from those documents. So let's dive into it. Wait, before we do that, I wanted to say something. I feel like in every video, I always welcome feedback, whether it's positive or constructive, right? But as long as it's delivered in a kind, respectful way, right? I preach kindness all the time. And honestly, most of you are amazing at it most of the time, and I generally appreciate that. However, this time when I posted the Gypsy Rose case, that was not the case at all. Some comments I received were just unnecessarily rude and straight up nasty, which is just uncalled for. And look, just because I missed the document drop or I happen to see things differently than you doesn't give anyone the right to name call or get personal. That's just not what this space is about. So I just wanted to quickly mention that I always encourage kindness and respect in my comment section, and I'm asking you to extend me the same courtesy, please. I know that by putting myself out there online means I'm always going to get some kind of negativity, and no matter what, right? There's always going to be miserable people out there who just want other people to feel miserable, and I'm just going to let you know right now, for all the haters out there, it's not going to work. That's just not who I am. So shame on you if that's what you did and that's how you chose to show up, but I still love you. God still loves you. And let's just, maybe do better next time, Yeah, let's just try to do that, right? Let's just all try to be nice to each other. Now with that out of the way, now we can get to the FOIA documents and see what other things are layered in there that we didn't cover in the first go around. So one thing that I did get feedback on was, that's not necessarily in the FOIA documents, but that I wanted to mention, was the claim or rumor that the family flushed Dee Dee's ashes down the toilet. So this story has been floating around for years, but let's be clear, it's still a rumor, right? So there's no concrete proof that it actually happened, but in my opinion, there's also nothing that conclusively disproves it either. Yes, there are photos showing that the box of Dee Dee's ashes are with her sister, but that's all we really have. We just have a picture of the box. And unless someone goes so far as to test the ashes, which, let's be honest, it's not going to happen, and I don't want that to happen. Like, please don't, please don't do that. There's no real way to really confirm what actually happened, right? According to various reports, Dee Dee's sister is the one who has them now, and honestly, let's just leave her in peace, right? The part of the story doesn't need to be poked any further, right? So, but what I want on the record is, it has neither been proven nor disproven, and Gypsy denying it just doesn't necessarily sway me one way or the other. I don't really trust anything that she says, so that doesn't, just because Gypsy says it's not true, it doesn't convince me. All I ever wanted to say about that is, Dee Dee's own family members made that statement in, I think it was the Mommy, Dead, and Dearest documentary, that they did flush her ashes down the toilet. And whether they were being serious or sarcastic, the fact that the family member would be willing to say that publicly tells me everything I need to know about how they felt about Dee Dee. So whether it actually happened or not, we'll probably never know. But with that level of bitterness says a lot about what kind of person Dee Dee was and may have been in life, right? And my opinion of Dee Dee still stands. I don't think she was a very good person at all. And did she deserve to die like that? No. I don't think anyone deserves to get murdered, especially by being stabbed 17 times. That's not, it's not the way to go. But again, if the family was willing to admit that or even joke about it publicly, then that's something, right? Whether it's true or not. So one thing that I find very funny is that a lot of people accuse me of not reading the FOIA documents or the FOIA or whatever you want to call them. On TikTok especially. People on TikTok are crazy. Anyways, they accuse me of not reviewing those and putting those in my video when they're over 500 pages long. Did you read them? Did you have the time to read them? And they weren't easy to find either. I did find them. But anyways, I just thought that was very interesting. So I did read them. I read all of them, and I did gather a lot of information from those. And another interesting thing I wanted to point out was a lot of people said that I was wrong and all this stuff, but the documents just kind of support the same thing I was saying. I don't have a good opinion of Dee Dee. I don't have a good opinion of Gypsy. The only person that I don't have a good opinion of him, but Nicholas, I think, deserves another look at, and because I think he was taken advantage of, and I said this in the first video, and I still believe that because these documents prove how manipulative Gypsy really is, and we'll get into it, right? But my opinion of everything still stands. This does not change my mind at all. And I hope that maybe I can convince you that, to see it my way. I don't know, I don't know what people are talking about when they say that I was incorrect in thinking certain things, but these documents just prove my point even more. So let's get into some of the stuff that I found. So like I said earlier, the documents are mostly about Nicholas Godejohn's trial and his defense, and some stuff that was not submitted to the jury or the jury did not want to look at, which is interesting. So one thing that I saw was that Gypsy created and sent many explicit videos. So over 100 videos were reportedly sent from Gypsy to Nicholas over the course of their relationship. The majority were self-directed by Gypsy, and with only a small number reportedly scripted by Nicholas. So Gypsy was the player in this, right? Many of these videos included sexually explicit content, some even styled as movies, and credits at the end, which, was she using iMovie? That's what I use. Oh no. The themes range from dominance and submission to disturbing elements like rape fantasies and role play, complicating the narrative that Gypsy was passive and manipulated participant. So this is just one part of the evidence that shows me that Gypsy was not a victim. She was a victim to her mother, but in the relationship with Nicholas, she was not a victim. She was a perpetrator of this narrative, right? There was also claims that Gypsy raped or planned to rape others, and there was no formal charges or confirmations of this at all, but there were mentions of it as a fantasy of her, and references to such acts are present only in the role play or fantasy discussion. So again, she's playing a dominant role in these videos, most of the videos, and it's just disturbing. I don't think it seemed like she was enjoying it, and somebody that is forced into it, you can tell who is willing and who is not. And Gypsy was definitely willing. Another thing that I saw was that Gypsy demonstrated prior sexual agency, and what I mean by this is before meeting Nicholas, Gypsy engaged in sexually expressive online behavior, including messaging with multiple men, including a figure named Dan, creating personas such as Demona. During these interactions, that's her one of her personas, and expressing interests in sexual violence and even incestuous role play. Though again, these were expressed in fantasy, not confirmed as actual actions. But again, we can see it didn't just involve Nicholas, it involved several other men. This was something that she was doing very often and expressing to multiple people of these fantasies of like rape and incest and all that kind of stuff. If she wasn't a willing participant, especially in the Nicholas case, then why was she doing it in other spaces as well? So that's just further proves to me that she was the one pursuing this. She was the one pushing this narrative, right? So it's just very disturbing and eye-opening, I think. So another thing that I wanted to point out was the narrative during Gypsy's trial was that Nicholas was the dominant one. And these documents dispute that. Prosecutors portrayed Nicholas as the controlling, sexually dominant master of Gypsy, and Gypsy as the submissive slave, right? However, the FOIA documents released messages from Facebook and Yahoo suggest that Gypsy often took dominant roles in sexual roleplay and interactions. This information, if introduced in trial, might have shifted the perception of who held psychological control in the relationship. But this was never in Gypsy's trial or Nicholas's trial. So it's just an interesting strategy. Like, why didn't they present this stuff in court? It's just very puzzling. And these documents, if you review them, it's very clear and evident that Gypsy was the controller in the situation. So this could have shifted the entire perception of Nicholas and his role in the murder of Dee, the ultimate murder of Dee Blanchard. So another thing that the documents reference is Gypsy's relationship with Dan that I mentioned earlier. So they reference this prior relationship between Gypsy and Dan Glidewell, I think is how you say his last name, whom she allegedly contacted shortly before the murder. While it's unclear whether the interaction was sexual, Dan testified that he chose not to meet with Gypsy. His testimony may have challenged key elements of Gypsy's narrative, but was never used by the defense, which, again, I don't understand why they didn't. Obviously, they were trying to save Gypsy, right? And, this could have proved that she, again, had sexual agency and she was pursuing other men and she had this role over and over and over again as the dominant one. So yeah, it's just proven by Dan's testimony that she was trying this in other places, right? And who knows, like, if he had met Gypsy, he could have been the one that was manipulated into doing her bidding, right? But Nicholas, unfortunately, was the weak man out, right? And he got chosen by Gypsy to perform this, right? Everyone has free will. I get that. I understand. But, if Dan had met Gypsy that day, who knows what would have happened. So yeah, it's very interesting. So these documents also reference ignored or underused camera evidence. So Gypsy's camera and an SD card were entered into physical evidence but were never forensically examined. The jury reportedly did not request to view the contents during the deliberation, and this represents a missed opportunity to assess deeper aspects of Gypsy's psychological state, possible planning, and premeditation. I don't understand why they didn't want to review those images, and I'm sure there was like videos and stuff on there too. We're human, right? Maybe they were just tired and made up their mind. I don't know. So May 22nd, 2015, there are also evidence in this pile of camera footage and stuff like that. There's also photos and staging of the actual murder, or I'll get into it, senses of premeditation. So the FOIA documents confirm that Gypsy took photos of Dee sleeping shortly before the murder. Around the same time, she also recorded a video in which she pantomimed stabbing motions over an empty bed. These actions may indicate psychological rehearsal and or premeditation, which, again, the jury didn't review these. Are we really going with that Gypsy was a total innocent bystander and just wanted to get out? It seemed like she was planning this for months, and she was the dominant one in her and Nicholas's relationship. Just keeps proving that she was never a victim in any type of way in this murder, in this act of murder. She was a victim to her mother, but she orchestrated this whole thing, and the jury didn't see that, right? And especially in Nicholas's case, they really didn't see it. And unfortunately, he got sentenced to life without parole. So, yeah. So, again, another thing that I found interesting was with these documents, we catch Gypsy in another lie. She said that she didn't know that she wasn't sick until she got arrested. So the documents suggest that Gypsy only took Valium with her when she fled Wisconsin after the murder. Valium is not typically prescribed for pain, so this contradicts her earlier claims that she believed she was still physically ill. This detail raises questions about the extent of her awareness regarding the truth of her medical condition. And I think she's gone like back and forth on this as well. I think during the trial, she stated that she wasn't aware that she was sick until she got arrested. But in other interviews and stuff, I've seen her, and I think in like my first video, I even said like she knew she could walk. She knew she could, do things that her mother said she couldn't do, and so it just seems like she's trying to manipulate every conversation and scenario to, further support the narrative that she wants, that she is the victim, and Nicholas and Dee were the perpetrators in every part of her life. So, yeah, it's just interesting. And there's like a lot more, obviously, in these documents. I'll mention a few other things and then we will close. So, again, another thing I wanted to mention was there's alleged fantasies of drugging and or assaulting men from Gypsy as well. So some of the records reference Gypsy discussing fantasies involving drugging men, hitting them to rob them, or engage in deceptive sexual encounters, paralleling Eileen Wuornos' type of behavior, which is disturbing. While there's no evidence that she acted out any of these ideas, they contribute to a more complex view of her mindset during the time, which I definitely agree with. She, again, was acting as the dominant party in this situation, so just further proves that. Another thing, too, is her and Nicholas both had mutual suicidal tendencies as well. So Nicholas's suicidal ideation was introduced at trial. However, the FOIA documentation shows that Gypsy also had a documented history of suicidal thoughts dating back to 2013, which was never presented in court. And in my opinion, this could have supported a narrative of mutual emotional instability rather than a one-sided manipulation, right? So, again, just some evidence that wasn't submitted to the jury, which I think could have swayed their opinion, especially about Nicholas. And on that subject, the defense failures in Nicholas's trial are just so upsetting. His legal team did not contact key witnesses, including family members who could speak to his childhood trauma and mental health. A jail counselor who might have testified about his confusion and cognitive limitations, and they failed to request a change of venue despite heavy pretrial publicity. Properly investigate whether he understood his Miranda rights, given questions around his reading level. So yeah, there was just so many things that his defense could have done. They didn't interview any of his family, and the jury, I read that the jury understood that he was diagnosed with autism around 3rd and 4th grade, and then again with Asperger's later in his teenage years. And having that knowledge, how do you think that he wasn't manipulated into this? He had a lot of confusion in jail about what he was actually doing there and what he had done, and his cognitive limitations were very evident, and they didn't do any interviews to prove this at all. So I think there's definitely like a chance for an appeal on his end. I really hope so, because like I said in the first video, you know, he did his part of the crime, right? I don't think he should get nothing, right? I think he should serve his time. However, it's not fair that Gypsy orchestrated this whole thing, convinced him to kill her mother for her. She serves 8 years and he gets life in prison. I just don't. I think there's room for reform here, and you know, I think especially Nicholas could be, you know, at least try, you know, you know, don't throw him in there and just have him fend for himself, like, especially, you know, with autism and stuff like that, like, there's just so much opportunity to help people with that disability. So I don't know. I really honestly think that he could be reformed, and I hope that they consider an appeal for his conviction. And again, he still needs to serve his time, but maybe in some kind of facility where he can be, you know, rehabilitated and, you know, let back out into society with supervision and stuff like that. Like, it just makes me so upset. Like, I don't think he should be in there for the rest of his life. I honestly don't believe that. So, after review of the over 500 pages of this FOIA, those are the main points that I could find. Now, if there's something that I missed, please let me know down in the comments. But obviously, again, 500 pages long, so we couldn't review everything. But those are the main points that I wanted to get out. So these newly released FOIA documents and appeal-related findings complicate what was once a seemingly straightforward narrative. We were all duped, at least I think, that Gypsy Rose Blanchard was a helpless victim who had no choice but to escape her abusive mother, but through murder. While her suffering under Dee's control is real and well documented, these new materials reveal a much more complex psychological portrait, one where Gypsy displayed agency, engaged in disturbing sexual role play, initiated relationships with multiple men online, and possibly misinterpreted her whole own medical condition and level of dependency. The unreviewed camera footage, the explicit videos she created, and her conversations involving domination, violence, and drugging others all point to a dual reality. Gypsy was a victim, yes, but she was also a participant in shaping her own narrative and influencing those around her, especially Nicholas Godejohn. On the other side, the FOIA documentation also shines a light on the serious question surrounding Nicholas's trial. His mental health and his intellectual capacity were poorly represented, if at all. Like, jeez. His defense team failed to explore crucial digital evidence, call key witnesses, or challenge a potential biased jury pool. It's difficult to argue that the full picture was ever truly seen in court, and these revelations don't rewrite history, but they do force us to reconsider the categories of villain and victim. The Gypsy Rose story is no longer just a cautionary tale of material abuse. It's now a case in moral ambiguity, legal failure, and the consequences of public narratives built on incomplete truths. Yes. It makes you wonder, like, did we all fall for a simplified version of the truth? And what I want to know is, did we make a deal with the devil? Is she out there right now, just living her life? Is that what we call justice? I don't think so. Again, like, Dee was not a fresh daisy. But she didn't deserve to die like this. And it's clear that Gypsy planned this for months and manipulated Nicholas into doing what she wanted him to do. And he is paying the price for it. Ugh. Anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'm really interested to know how you guys feel about Gypsy now. And have you guys been watching Life After Lockup with Gypsy Rose? It just continues. She, like I said in the previous video, you know, she was married to that guy, Ryan. I think she divorced him officially, but anyways, now she's with this new guy, Ken. She was cheating on Ryan with this Ken guy. And, you know, it's just the same old stuff of them, her and Ken, like, arguing, and she's, like, obviously trying to, like, manipulate him, not into, like, murdering anyone, right? But you can see the manipulation from a million miles away, and they're publicly displaying this on Life After Lockup, which is mind-blowing. And, again, my opinion still stands of Gypsy. Like, she has a golden opportunity to turn this into something really good. She could be an advocate and start her own charity or something to help children in need and children in abusive situations, women in abusive situations. But she chooses to pursue a life of an influencer and being a reality TV star. So hopefully one day she will turn it around and maybe do some good. But for right now, it's just like a train wreck. You can't look away. You have to watch. It's so bad. So this continues to be one of the most emotionally complex and morally challenging stories in modern true crime history. And the reason I wanted to cover it in the first place, right? But it just kind of snowballed into this monstrosity. The FOIA doesn't change what happened, right? But it does change how we understand what happened. And whether you see Gypsy as a victim, a manipulator, or something in between, one thing is certain: this case has never been black and white and will never be. So as we continue to process and discuss this case online in our homes and communities, just want to gently remind you and everyone listening, and please be kind. We can disagree, obviously. We can dig into the dark material, but we don't need to tear each other down to do so, right? And I always end with a quote, right? And this one I thought was perfect. As Mr. Rogers wisely said, there are 3 ways to ultimate success. The first way is to be kind. The second way is to be kind. And the third way is to be kind. And that's a good reminder we could all probably use more of, right? And there's always room for kindness. Kindness is free, right? So let me know what you guys think in the comments of this case. Has your opinion changed at all? Of Gypsy Rose, of Nicholas, of Dee? Let me know in the comments. Does Gypsy deserve a longer sentence? Does Nicholas deserve an appeal? I want to know. Let me know. All right, let's look at the final piece. Oh my god. Oh, he's so cute. So this is my kitty Jasper. And since we were revisiting the Gypsy Rose case, and I didn't want to do a piece dedicated to Dee, didn't want to do one to Gypsy, didn't want to do it to anyone. This video was mostly for myself, right? I have a picture of me back here and a picture of my cat here, because it's all about kindness and empowering yourself, right? To move past the negative comments and just keep doing what you're doing and keep believing in yourself, right? So I wanted to paint something that I wanted to paint this time. And I wanted to paint my kitty Jasper. So he's just so cute. And I chose these bright colors because he's so vibrant. He's a vibrant kitty in my life. So Alright, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed that coverage again of the Gypsy Rose Blanchard case and the deep dive into the FOIA documents. Again, let me know what you think in the comments, and do not forget to subscribe. That way you will never miss one of my stories. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and go out there, be kind to one another, treat each other with respect, and I will see you in the next one, guys. Bye! The artist and her muse. Oh, you put up with so much, huh? No, you're such a sweetie. Oh, it's uncanny, Jasper. Uncanny.